A woman from Kathmandu has had TPS for years. Work permit renewed like clockwork, no criminal record, paid taxes every single year. She checked the news in August 2025 and saw her country's protection had ended. Then, 4 months later, a court brought it back. She let herself breathe again. Then, in February 2026, a different court took it away a second time. Same status, same paperwork, same person. 3 different answers in 6 months. If you think that sounds like an isolated Nepal problem, it isn't. It's the blueprint for what's happening to almost every TPS country right now. Here's the mechanism behind all of it, and it starts with one Supreme Court case most people outside immigration law never heard of. On June 25, 2026, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 in a case called Mullen versus Doe. The ruling did something narrow-sounding that turned out to be enormous. It held that courts generally can't review the Homeland Security Secretary's decision to end a TPS designation at all. Not, the government usually wins. Not, here's a high bar to challenge it. Courts largely can't hear the challenge in the first place. According to FWD.US, that single ruling knocked out the main legal theory that had been blocking TPS terminations for 8 different countries at once. Watch what happened next, because the pace is the part that should actually worry you. Within weeks of Mullen, Haiti and Syria's terminations went into effect. Yemen, Burma, and South Sudan followed right behind them. By early August, 5 countries' protections were gone. And Nepal, worth pausing on, because Nepal's story shows exactly how fragile protected really is right now. Nepal's TPS had already been terminated back in August 2025, months before Mullen even existed. A federal judge vacated that termination on December 31st, briefly restoring status for thousands of people. Then, on February 9, 2026, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals stayed that judge's order and restored the termination, for Nepal and for Honduras and Nicaragua alongside it. 3 separate legal outcomes in 7 months for people who did absolutely nothing to cause any of it. Somalia is the newest name on that list. According to USCIS's own published guidance, Somalia's TPS designation is terminated effective August 14, 2026. Picture an Ethiopian nurse in Minnesota reading that same news right now. She spent 4 years building a life around a status that, on paper, is still active today. Her lease renews in October. Her kids just started the school year. Nothing about her circumstances has changed since June. What's changed is that the one legal shield protecting her, a single judge's order, is now sitting exactly where Nepal's order sat back in December, right before it got taken away. She doesn't know if her stay holds through the fall. Nobody does, including her lawyer. If you or someone you know holds TPS from any country right now, this is exactly the kind of update worth not missing. Subscribe, because we're tracking every one of these rulings as they land. Step back and count what's actually left standing. Out of roughly 17 countries that have held TPS designations in recent years, groups like the ACLU and FWD.US now count only a small handful with protections still fully active, a group that includes El Salvador, Lebanon, Sudan, and Ukraine. Everyone else is either already terminated or, like Ethiopia, hanging on a single court order the government is working to dissolve. Here's the part that's easy to miss if you only follow the country that applies to you. This was never really 17 separate legal fights. It was one theory, that these terminations weren't properly reviewed under the Administrative Procedure Act, being used across every country at once. Mullen didn't just decide Haiti and Syria's cases. It took the one tool nearly everyone was using and made it stop working everywhere, all at the same time. That's why country after country has fallen in the same short stretch of months, instead of each fight dragging out separately for years the way TPS litigation used to. That's the piece that changes how you should actually think about this, no matter which country you're watching. It was never really about whether your specific country's conditions improved or got worse. Country conditions were the justification written on paper. The mechanism underneath all of it was a single legal argument, and once that argument stopped working in June, every case built on it became vulnerable at roughly the same time, almost regardless of the facts on the ground in any one place. So what does this actually mean if your country is one of the ones still standing? Employers dealing with TPS-based work authorization are already being told by law firms like Morgan Lewis to treat every remaining designation as provisional. Check Form I-9 records now. Know exactly when each employee's current extension actually expires, and don't wait for a termination notice to start that process. That's not just paperwork advice. An employer caught flat-footed can end up letting someone go too early, based on an old printed date, or keeping someone on too long without realizing a deadline already passed. And either mistake creates real legal exposure on both sides of the desk. If you personally hold TPS from Ethiopia, or from any of the handful of countries still active, the honest read of the pattern above you is that a court order today is not a guarantee for next month. That's not fear-mongering. It's literally what happened to Nepal, twice, in under a year. Think about that Kathmandu woman one more time. She did the paperwork 3 separate times in 18 months. Not because she made a mistake, not because anything about her case changed, but because the ground kept shifting under a status she'd held responsibly for years. That's not a Nepal story anymore. It's a preview. If your status has already been terminated, the door isn't fully closed either. Once TPS ends, you revert to whatever status you had before it. For many people, that means undocumented. But for others, there may be a separate path already available. A pending asylum claim, a family-based petition, or another form of relief that existed independently of TPS the whole time. That's not automatic, and it's not guaranteed. It's a reason to talk to an immigration attorney now, while there's still time to build a plan, instead of after a work authorization document expires with nothing lined up behind it. Here's the question worth asking yourself honestly. Whether you're the Kathmandu woman, the nurse in Minnesota, or watching from a country that hasn't been touched yet. Do you actually know what happens to you the day your TPS ends? Not the general idea, the specific answer? Do you know if you have a backup filing already in motion, or nothing at all sitting behind that one document? Most people never had to ask that question before this year. Almost everyone with TPS needs to be able to answer it now. Here's the honest bottom line. This was never really a series of separate country-by-country decisions. It was one legal switch that got flipped